there's some folks who are caught up at security. So we're going to give them another 2 minutes to get here. So hang on. Good afternoon. Bonjour et bienvenue au premier sommet canadien du cyclisme. Good afternoon and welcome to the first ever Canadian National Bike Summit. Je voudrais d'abord reconnaître le territoire ancestral des Algonquins Anishinabeg sur lequel nous sommes aujourd'hui réunis. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinabeg Nation. Je m'appelle Judy Vargatot et je suis la directrice générale de Vélo Canada. I'm the executive director of Canada Bikes. De la part de Vélo Canada, il me fait grand plaisir de vous accueillir à la colline parlementaire et dans cette salle de comité où nous allons passer quelques heures importantes et sans précédent au premier sommet canadien de cyclisme. On behalf of Canada Bikes, I'm delighted to welcome you all to this unprecedented occasion on Parliament Hill, the first ever National Bike Summit. First, I'd like to share some important housekeeping items. Should anybody need to excuse themselves to the facilities, the washrooms are just to the left, out the door to the side there, and then immediately on your left, there's a door. Feel free, despite the formality of the room, to get up whenever you need to. We are going to be on camera, so we are broadcasting this webinar to across the country, actually, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. So in case any of you weren't told, please make sure your security badges are not visible. So make sure they're below the desk line. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank those of you who've made time to come and join us today. As is the nature of things on Parliament Hill, there will be some coming and going. We are expecting a number of our members of Parliament, and we thank them for joining us for the amount of time they are able to do so. But we do understand that there's been unexpected votes called in the House, so they may be coming in late, but they will join us at the back. I'd also like to thank the Dutch Ambassador, Henk van der Swan, I hope I pronounced the name all right, for joining us today as well. And councillors from the cities of Calgary, Winnipeg, and Ottawa who are with us. And then folks who've come in from coast to coast, all the way from Nova Scotia to British Columbia, who've flown in person. And then I'd like to welcome everybody who's joining us online. We have folks from almost every province and even some territories joining us via online, and they will be able to submit some comments and questions via the webinar as well. So today the meeting is held in the spirit of a parliamentary special committee meeting. Our purpose is not just to bring you all together and to share, but also to gather testimony about the importance of having a national cycling strategy for Canada. We would love to have more time, but for a lot of reasons, we have a very constrained schedule. We appreciate the time you spent with us. We welcome your feedback on the feedback form in your packets, because we hope this is just the first of many. Because of the tight timeline, we'd like you to save questions to the end. You have yellow pieces of paper in your packages that you can jot down any questions or comments that you have. We will be collecting those as we go along, and then we will be looking through them and selecting a few questions that we have time for folks to answer. So just jot them down. They will all be collected, comments as well. And I hope you all are aware that written comments and briefs are welcome, have been invited, and can be sent in after the fact as well. So if you have thoughts you want to share later, just send them in to us, info@canadabikes.org. Okay, so I'd like to move on to thank and ask for the first speakers to come up and say a few words. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we would not be here today if it wasn't for our wonderful partners, the Senator Nancy Greene-Raine and National Health and Fitness Day. Thank you so much, Senator. So we welcome you to say a few words to the group.
Thank you very much and welcome. I'm really pleased to be here today, and I've been following with great interest the evolution of a national strategy for cycling in Canada. And a summit like this is very important, and I hope it can become a regular thing. You know, there's so many different aspects of cycling, and we all have our own little pocket, whether you're a road biker or a mountain biker or riding down to get your groceries. I think we all can come together on certain things, and that is safety and the rules of the roads and the need to promote that. I personally think that every child that finishes elementary school should have received education in cycling, know how to ride a bike, and know the rules of the road. That should be part of every curriculum for every elementary school in Canada. Now, you know, a lot of people say, well, we have all these jurisdictional things. Yes, there are jurisdictional issues, but we are all Canadians, and we're smart enough to think, yeah, that makes sense, and through a forum like this, it can happen. I also know that it's very important when you're doing planning for any community, and every municipality has a planning department. That planning department has to really keep thinking about active transportation, how you can get from the homes and the shopping centers and the offices back and forth together. There are a lot of good examples around the world, and there are great examples right here in Canada. And if you look at Ottawa, you can see one. So there's a lot of work to be done and sharing the information, and I'm just really pleased to be part of it and be cheering for you guys, but you're the ones that are going to make it work, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. We appreciate your words, and there are others who have made this summit possible, and we've asked them to say just a few words each as well, because really this has been a real team effort, a partnership effort. So we'd like to start by thanking the Canadian Automobile Association for your support and collaboration, and I believe you have a couple of words to say to us as well.
Sure, thank you very much, Ian Jack with the CIA. Just to say that we've been a supporter of Bike Day on the Hill since the first one. We're a proud supporter of this summit. Because we believe in sharing the road, we believe in cycling, we believe in proper active infrastructure in this country. We think everybody's a winner when that happens. We think that almost every cyclist in this country is a driver at some point as well, and that almost every driver is also a cyclist. And we need to work together and make sure we're doing that. We're all in it together, so let's do this together. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian. All right. So carrying right down, we've got Mountain Equipment Co-op has been a fabulous partner for us and a financial supporter of Canada Bikes long before this summit. And really, it's thanks to them that we were able to even get started on planning this. So I'd like to ask Chris Chapman to say a few words on behalf of Mountain Equipment Co-op.
Thanks, Judy. Thanks to the Senator, and thanks for inviting us here today. We're a retail cooperative, and a lot of our members are cyclists. So in 2010, we brought out our own brand of bicycles. And now in 2017, as an indicator of how popular cycling is, we now stock 5 brands across road, mountain, commuting, touring, all different types of cycling. So along with providing cycling equipment for our members, we've also partnered with a lot of organizations across Canada. So from the far west, we support the Hub Cycling organization in Vancouver. Way out to the east, we're supporting the Halifax Cycling Coalition. And here in Ottawa, thankfully, supporting Canada Bikes. We were really delighted to have issued Canada Bikes with a capacity building grant last year in 2016. And that grant has allowed Canada Bikes to increase their capacity for fundraising, advocacy, and engagement. And that's resulted in events like today, where we as cycling organizations can get together and convene and discuss those issues that need to be taken to increase cycling infrastructure. We're proud to support a strategy that encourages more people to get outside safely, and I have been happy to be a signatory of a Canada Bikes letter to support a national cycling strategy. So thank you very much for hosting the summit today, and I'm very excited and looking forward to hearing what everybody has to say at the summit today. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris. And now we have another wonderful partner and supporter who's been working, I know, supporting cycling in Ontario for a great many years and now has joined us to support a national effort. So I'd like to ask Monica to come up from the Cooperators Group of Companies, please.
Thank you, Judy. Bon après-midi. Je suis très heureuse d'être ici avec vous lors de cet important rassemblement. My name is Monica Wyrzykowska, and I'm the Senior Government Relations Advisor for the Cooperators Group of Companies. Just one short year ago, in fact, we met representatives from Canada Bikes at the Shared Road Ontario Bike Summit. And I'm pleased to be here today, 1 year later, to join the call for a national cycling strategy. For us as an insurer, cycling advocacy just makes sense. We support safer roads, healthier lifestyles, as well as a reduced carbon footprint, all in an effort to make our communities more resilient. And as some of you may be aware, the Cooperators, like MEC, is a cooperative. We are owned and governed by 44 cooperatives across the country, from coast to coast to coast. And in fact, MEC is one of our member owners as well. As a cooperative, the concern for community is one of our founding principles, and I know that is really what brings us all here today. So on behalf of the Cooperators, thank you to the organizers. We know how much work goes into an event like this. To all of you, the advocates in the room, the panelists, members of Parliament, the Honourable Minister, who I hope will be maybe joining us, and the Honourable Member of the Senate for hosting us. Thank you for your tireless efforts in advocating for more resilient communities by adding more people on bikes across Canada every single day. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right. So I'd like to bring video greetings now. We're going to have the Honourable Eleanor McMahon, who is a member of Provincial Parliament and has been instrumental in moving cycling to where it is today in Ontario, which is a really great place. And so she was unable to be here in person, but she has very kindly taken the time to send us some greetings. And I'd like to acknowledge that we have some members of Parliament who've arrived. Hello. Hello, Wayne. I'm really pleased to see MP Member of Parliament Wayne Stetsky, who's just joined us over here. And I don't know who else is. And Will Amos is here too. And I see that MP Gord Johns has just arrived. Wonderful. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much for taking time. We really appreciate your joining us. And so right now, we are going to show you the greeting from the Honourable Eleanor McMahon. And maybe we can turn the lights down to make it easier to see. Is that it? Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Bonjour à tous. Annie, bonjour. I'm Eleanor McMahon, Ontario's Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport. And I'm very pleased to send my best wishes to all of you attending the First National Bike Summit on Parliament Hill. Je suis heureuse de faire part de mes meilleurs vœux à tous ceux qui participent au premier National Bike Summit sur la colline parlementaire. Like all of you, I know the important role that cycling plays in enhancing our overall wellness and quality of life. My passion for cycling, as most of you may know, comes from a very personal place. In 2006, our family experienced a great tragedy when my husband, Greg Staubert, an OPP sergeant, was killed just north of our home in Burlington while on a training ride. I never expected that Greg's life would be taken doing something that he loved, riding his bike. And yet it happened. He was killed by a man who had 5 convictions for driving under suspension, 4 convictions for driving with no license, $15,000 in unpaid fines. And 2 months after he killed my husband, he hit someone else. Faced with those tragic circumstances, we were fortunate to have the capacity and to make the decision to create something positive out of that tragic loss of life. And so, the first thing that we did was to create Greg's Law in 2009. We made a proposition to the Ontario government at the time to enhance the penalties for drivers who drive habitually under suspension. Greg's Law, as it became known, passed in 2010. At the same time, I had started conversations both nationally and internationally about the idea of creating a cycling organization in Ontario. And so the Share the Road Cycling Coalition was born in 2008. I'm very pleased that Jamie Stuckless, the Executive Director of Share the Road, is with you today to talk to you a little bit about the journey of the organization that we built together and about some of the work that we're doing right here in Ontario. I'm very proud of the work that we've done, both before I was elected and that I now have the privilege to continue doing as the Minister of Tourism, Culture and Sport. Investments in infrastructure are key. I don't think I need to tell anyone in that room about that. And so, in 2015, as part of the budget process, we announced as a provincial government $25 million. That's something I started calling for when I was at Share the Road, as Jamie knows. And just yesterday, on Bike to Work Day, just in front of Bike to Work, Bike Month actually, my first private member's bill after I was elected, Minister Del Duca and I, he's the Minister of Transportation, celebrated a record investment, in fact the largest investment in our government's history in cycling infrastructure, $50 million in funding to allow municipalities to make the kind of meaningful differences in the lives of cyclists and in everyone's life, as we know, that are going to carry us forward for years to come. Here in Ontario, we're engaged across the board in investments in cycling. Cycling tourism at the Ontario Bike Summit this year. I introduced the first ever cycling tourism strategy in Ontario's history, and together with partners across the province, we're making it clear to everyone who wants to come to our province that they should definitely cycle here and enjoy all of the amenities that we have to offer. So, thank you again for inviting me. I'm sorry that I couldn't be with you. I wish you well, and I look forward to hearing about the outcome of your discussions. Merci et bonne conférence à tous. À la prochaine.
Un grand merci à notre député qui nous a parlé de l'importance du cyclisme au Canada, pour le Canada, non seulement l'Ontario. Donc, on est très content de pouvoir un peu prendre la relève et y aller au niveau national. Mais aujourd'hui, nous allons aussi avoir l'honneur d'entendre quelques mots et de la sagesse de la part d'une autre province qui a fait qui a vraiment commencé dans le côté du cyclisme. Donc, on aura le plaisir d'écouter un peu ce que font le Vélo Québec. Et c'est un grand anniversaire pour eux cette année, le 50e anniversaire. Et donc, on a bien hâte d'entendre leur discours aussi. So thank you very much for Minister McMahon to send us that. We will hear more about Ontario in a little while. So I do have to tell you that we were expecting the Honourable Catherine McKenna, Minister of Environment and Climate Change. I'm sure you're all aware that events on the world stage have come to trump our summit. I did receive a call just a few moments before we started to say that she's going to try to come at the end. So they're going to try to get here, but not at this moment. So we'll continue along with our agenda with her very best wishes. And apparently, if she can't make it here, she'll try to meet us all out on the steps. We hope everyone will go out there for some photos. And then the bike ride, which she has her helmet with her and is prepared to come riding as well if the stars align. So now we're going to begin the substantive part where we're going to be hearing in committee style some brief presentations. We appreciate everyone's understanding that we've had to ask for such short presentations because we really have so much to hear from today. But before we start with our presenters, I'm going to invite the chair of the Canada Bikes board to come and speak about our vision for cycling in Canada. So Canada Bikes has been around since 2012 and has been working very hard to get to this day, which is why we wanted to thank our partners that made it possible for us to be here. And we invite everyone to continue along this journey with us. So I'd like to ask Anders to come up and share the vision.
Share the vision for cycling in Canada. That's my job, and to replace the Honourable Minister. All right. Thank you so much. I am absolutely, it makes me almost want to tear up seeing so many people in the room who I know full well how hard you work, and to see the sort of solidarity that's here around what is fundamentally a very, very simple idea. Just to go over the presentation, what I'm going to go, and I'm just going to go briefly about Canada Bikes for any of you who's not aware of our organization, what we do. Talk about our vision for a bike-friendly Canada. Talk about the problems that Canada has that the bike can solve. Where we are now, what other countries are doing, what a national cycling strategy is, and what it might be and what it can cover. So I'm going to start with our organization. We are in a massive growth spurt. Honestly, when I started getting involved in this type of thing almost a decade and a half ago, I was always shocked that Canada didn't have cycling as transportation, a national organization like you see in many other countries around the world. For example, in the United States, they're over 100 years old. But maybe, it's just a long walk between Winnipeg and Saskatoon and a long bike ride, and we just haven't got there yet. But anyways, in 2012, we got organized at the Velocity Conference in Vancouver and established ourselves. And in the past year, we've been growing really, really rapidly, I think because people are excited by all kinds of activity at the federal and national level on this and seeing the potential. So we are a membership-based organization. We've got board members from coast to coast, which we're extremely proud of. We have an overwhelmingly female board, which is really awesome compared to a lot of corporations and stuff in Canada. So that's really exciting, and it speaks to something that we're going to talk about a little bit later in terms of the importance. We have extremely skilled and diverse board, and we've had Judy Vargatoth come on board as our first staff member in the last year, which has really revolutionized things, and she's amazing, but you'll see that. So Canada Bikes, as I said, is a membership organization. We are very, very proud to have some of the strongest, most powerful voices in Canada on cycling on side with us, including small little organizations like Vélo Québec. You may have heard of them. They happen to have their 50th anniversary. Organizations like Cycle Toronto, Bike Winnipeg, which I'm obviously very proud of, Bike Calgary, even little ones in Peterborough, Red Deer. Anyways, look us up. You want to join us, please sign up. We'd be happy to have you. All right, so what do we do? We have two main priorities right now. First is the development of a national level cycling infrastructure fund, just because we've seen it work elsewhere. And the second is a national cycling strategy. So what I flashed up there, first of all, is the national cycling strategy piece, which we're going to come back to. The second one is a proposal we put together for Minister Sohi and the Ministry of Infrastructure and Communities, talking about what all kinds of great things that could happen if the government of Canada invested directly in cycling and walking infrastructure. I urge you to have a look at our website and read it in detail. There's a lot of research went into that. And the only thing I would suggest is just close your eyes and imagine, because what Canada could be with that kind of investment. But we're here for, the National Bike Summit, and that's another thing that we do is pull people together. So we're constantly pulling people together by email. As you all know, we are connected in ways we never have been before, so that's maybe one of the reasons why Canada has finally been able to organize at a national level for cycling advocacy, is that we are connected in that way. But it's extremely important. I've met board members in the last few days that I've been working with for 4 years, but I've never met. And some of you, it's really, really nice to see in person instead of that little picture on Twitter. And so the Bike Summit is something we do as well. Our vision, which is what I'm here to talk about. I want everybody you don't have to close your eyes because that seems weird, like but if you want to, you can. I just want you to remember being a little kid and remember that moment of freedom. And I'm not talking about the kind of freedom that's conceptual. I'm talking about that kind of freedom where you remember why it is that you are happy to be alive. And I want you to remember that kind of freedom that you have to be able to sort of go on your own somewhere and take an initiative. That kind of self-esteem that you have. Fundamentally speaking, our built environment enables the way that we behave. And I think most people in the room recognize this. And so what we see is that it's possible, no matter who you are, what ability you have, and not just possible, but likely that you will ride a bicycle in Canada. Keep in mind the overwhelming majority of trips currently taken in Canada are less than 6 kilometers. 7 kilometers to 1 kilometer is considered to be the threshold of cycling. Any less, it's easier to walk. Any further, it drops down, even if you're in Groningen or Amsterdam. But there's an overwhelming amount of people, and we think that we can do it. The reason we need to get there is because, well, first of all, just the pure joy, okay? Let's not forget that piece. It's really important. This is not all dark and scary. But there are some really serious issues we need to tackle. And that slide is a wall of text. And I know walls of text are horrible slides, but it's a horrible slide on purpose. Because there's so many, we couldn't even fit them on there. So if you look at the bottom, so just school attendance and truancy, we could do an entire presentation on the importance of that alone and what that does for a country. So I'm not going to belabor the benefits. I think it's come to be fully well recognized how important it is that everybody gets on a bicycle. Where are we today? We can measure that in a number of different ways. We can measure the number of people who ride a bicycle occasionally. I think that's not a bad idea. And keep in mind, that's 40% of people who've ridden in the last year. We can measure by the amount of adults who cycle to work. If we were to measure that in Groningen, Netherlands, we'd come up with 60%. In Canada, we're at around 2, which is double the US, yes. But it's still a shadow of what people actually want to do. We could measure it in the massive amount of latent demand. We could say lots of people want to in Canada, but honestly, the amount of people who want to ride a bicycle is consistent around the world. If you poll Calgary or if you poll Hamilton, how many people would like to ride a bicycle to work? If as long as it takes you less than half an hour, you can do it on safe and dedicated cycling infrastructure, you'll get 75% of people. That's just because those are the people who thought about it, can imagine, and are like, okay. Then there's a certain amount of people like, no, never. But what I think is very interesting and what is never asked is, if you ever ask those people, okay, but would you be okay if we put in the bicycle infrastructure for your daughter or your husband, because we know that they do? And combine those, and I'm pretty sure you're going to get to about 98%, because I have a lot of confidence in human beings, and I find that only about 2% are real, And I actually have done that at the University of Manitoba with Councillor Janice Lukes, who I believe is in the room. We asked people what they thought about a particular piece of street and whether we should put in a protected bike lane or not. When we asked the drivers, we found the drivers, and of course I don't like categorizing people because I don't think it's real. I'm a driver too. They said that they wanted it, overwhelmingly, when they could see the vision. So that's what we're trying to do, is expand and explain that vision. Canada, of course, has non-standardized infrastructure design and outdated laws. So I came from Montreal last week. I'm here. All the signs are different. I can't expect the same sort of level of safety. And after having lived in Netherlands for the past 3 months just before coming here, I know what it's actually like. And Canada is a long way to go. And I'm from Winnipeg, where we're making it up still. We don't have a national bicycle tour. There's a lot of ways that we could measure it, but I think this is maybe my favorite way to measure it, just because no matter what you think and what you want to do with your life, you ought to care about this, because I think, just quick straw poll, who here biked to work when they were, or biked to school when they were a kid? Yeah, right. So if you ask people who have children and then ask their children whether they do that, half those hands are going to drop in a room. That's hugely problematic. And it's not because we've become lazy, it's not because things have gotten, there's a few things. There's the proliferation of automobiles without the change in design, fundamentally. And you see it reflected. So I know kids, I fundamentally believe there's no difference between a Chinese child and a Swiss one and a Canadian one. But that's what they get to do, and it's based on their built environment. Another way you could measure this is gender equity. So, realistically speaking, 51% of people out on the roads should probably be women cycling. Give or take how you identify yourself, of course. But we're going to use these two archetypes, the traditional ones, just because that's the way it's traditionally been measured, and it's really, really important. And what we find, and this is from a recent Stats Canada report released in April, is that overwhelmingly men are outnumbering women out on the roads. It's awful. It's not right. So, now, that's another wall text slide, but I put that up there just because I urge you to have a look at that report and read that in detail and see what it's actually telling you. So that's telling you, for example, that the percentage of people who reported cycling in the past 12 months by sex, 47% for men, 34% for women. What's happening in our peer countries? Australia's national cycling strategy, I've been to Australia twice to look at cycling-related stuff and walking-related stuff. I could tell you, it's not actually a great place to ride a bicycle, but they have a national cycling strategy. And they recognize that it was important, and they recognize that they do it in a certain way. And I just pulled out one little thing about it, which is how they organize the priorities. So just have a look at that. This is from Denmark's national cycling strategy. I don't want to talk about Copenhagen. Who cares about Copenhagen? But think about the small town outside of Copenhagen. And ask yourself, what do you think that part of the country looks like? And ask yourself how they got there. So I just emboldened one just little paragraph from the intro that talks about how the bicycle strategy should be an inspiration to municipalities and to other actors. From Germany's national cycling strategy, and that's a really, really good one. Highly recommend you read that one from start to finish, because it's very comparable. And they talk about the federal government playing a key role as a facilitator, coordinator, and catalyst in the promotion of cycling. They're the ones who made the news, for example, for the massive cycling superhighways along highways in Germany that they have planned. This is another little piece of the German national cycling strategy. They talk about how it's addressed not only to the federal government, but to all of the partners. So I think that's always going to be something come up. And if you look at who's in the room right now, it shows you the kind of people in the room who need to be doing this together. Because obviously, municipalities are going to build the cycle tracks. Provincial governments are going to have to not build the hospitals. No, still need to build hospitals, but they won't have the massive expenditures in chronic disease prevention. The bicycle, by the way, is somebody said this last night, and they said it is probably the most effective primary prevention strategy there is, just generally. I see a lot of people working in the health field nodding. The EU cycling strategy. The EU has so many cycling strategies at a national level that they're now developing one for the EU itself. I should say, we'll see in June. Actually, we are June. We'll see in a couple weeks, because there's a massive conference happening, the world's biggest international conference on cycling, happening in Nijmegen, Netherlands, where they're going to be making some announcements, but they've been working on a blueprint for the past year. And this is sort of why. I don't think we're going to show the videos. I'm going to post them online after the summit. After all, I think it's far better to get some discussion. But I just wanted to point out a couple of stills, and I grabbed them here for that reason. Of a country with a national cycling strategy since 1970. They're actually on their second one. And a country that doesn't have one. These are two videos I took in the last month. One is just outside of Amsterdam. This one is in Montreal. This is actually on a bike route in between Canada's most bicycle-friendly postal code, which is in the Plateau area of Montreal, and the port. And this particular moment, if you see this little girl, her name is Ava. I met her at a green light. And her mom, Leanne. I asked her to rate the bicycle path that she was on a 1 to 10, and she gave it a 1. This is her passing between cars, trying to spread out the cars to move them away from her mom. And I think that that image, I was shocked when I captured on video. It's one of those moments where I was like, there's no way I could have scripted that. I try and video all kinds of things. And I think that tells more about our vision for cycling. And if you look at this image, what's happening here is they're having a conversation. They actually had about a 3-minute conversation because this is a really big road and you have to wait at this particular one. And the two kids were suggesting that we go this way and we go that way, and they're having a discussion. They actually had two annoying little backseat drivers. And it just struck me that what this is normal cycling. This is social cycling. This is taking the same amount of space as a car. It's giving the same amount of space to human beings to collaborate. So fundamentally speaking, we're here to talk about a national cycling strategy because that's something that we want to see. We think it's going to pull everything together. What is it? It helps us achieve the overall goal of more Canadians riding bicycles. It's written via consultation with stakeholders. It's evidence-based, includes financial implications and results in a set of policies, guidelines, and actions. And it guides all levels of government and partners as they work to improve conditions for cycling across Canada. Now, I'm going to stop my presentation there because I want to have as much time as possible for questions because we have so many people in the room. I would like you, if you have a chance, to have a look. We have copies of the National Cycling Strategy overview for you. That's not everything in there. It's not the answers, but it's a guide of what the answers are going to tell us, and it talks about what National Cycling Strategy can cover and start to address. Thank you very much for your time.
Excellent. Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Anders. Thank you very much. That was great. So we're doing wonderfully on schedule. So now we're going to go into our invited speakers that are going to come up and really address one specific question. So what we've asked them to address is, why is federal support of a national cycling strategy for Canada, including funding for cycling infrastructure, important to the people or organization that you represent? Or so from your perspective, what should the federal government consider when developing a national cycling strategy? So we're very pleased and honored to invite our first speaker, Her Worship Lisa Helps, the Mayor of Victoria, British Columbia, to come and share some words.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here. I do note that I have to leave at 4:15 to go to another meeting, so I might miss the questions. And if you have any questions about anything I say or anything about Victoria, please email me, mayor@victoria.ca. My presentation just went blank. I don't know if that's a good sign. It looks like a big piece of asphalt. So stop the clock. We only have 3 minutes, so.
It's okay, I won't count it.
There we go.
It was there. There it is. Play from start. Well, sure, because this is, if you could just go slideshow and then start show. Uh-oh. There we go. Excellent. Very good. Okay. So why Canada needs, and you'll notice I've been a little bit playful here, strategies are great, but action plans are even better. Why Canada needs a national cycling action plan. Consider this kid here on the back of the bike. These are all photos from Victoria with the exception of one, because growing up riding will make riding the new normal and not some alternate form of transportation. And consider then, the government needs to consider how this will over time reduce GHGs when this kid is riding her own bike when she gets older. Because cycling builds community, creates a sense of connection and belonging, as you can see in this picture. And this really connection, belonging, the connections we make while they're on the road, the government needs to consider how this will increase the mental health and the resilience of our communities. Because cycling increases health outcomes, happiness, and well-being. This is the launch here of our Cycling Without Age program in Victoria, just launched on Monday. It takes seniors around with me or other volunteers pedaling the bicycle, and the government needs to consider how this will reduce healthcare costs and create connection and belonging. This is, I think, one of the most important ones from the government's perspective, because building bike infrastructure makes tax dollars go further than building infrastructure for cars. It costs less dollars per kilometer to build bike infrastructure. You can literally move more people with less pavement. And I think the government really should be motivated by this. It makes tax dollars go further by funding bike infrastructure. Because cycling is good for the economy, it keeps the economy moving. Study after study shows that high-quality bike infrastructure is good for local business, it creates jobs, and it grows the economy. This is Ellie Blue. She wrote this book. She's from Portland, and we're having her coming to speak in Victoria on Monday. So if any of you happen to be in Victoria on Monday, join us for Bikes Mean Business at City Hall from 12 until 1. Why else does a national cycling action plan make sense? Because, believe it or not, building bike infrastructure is something we can all agree on. That's my counsel. We are cutting the cake at the launch of our Pandora separated bike lane. And this bike infrastructure, our 25-kilometer all ages and abilities network, passes unanimously every time it comes to council, from left to right to center, because my council and all of us in this room, and particularly the federal government, should take a long-term view, and biking infrastructure makes sense for all the reasons that I've listed for the long term. And that is all I've got. Even though I have 30 seconds left, I'll leave my time to other speakers. Happy to answer any questions. And that's my bike, one of them. That's my summer bike with no fenders. Thank you to Canada Bikes, and folks, let's do this.
Thank you very, very much, Mayor Helps. And I realized in my haste to get things going that I didn't read the bio. So please let me do that now, because I think it's fair to make sure that we know what wonderful advocates we have across the country. Mayor Helps believes that it is her job as Mayor of Victoria to employ business sensibilities and community values to lead an organization that serves all of its citizens. With a transparent and common sense approach to decision-making, Mayor Helps has championed both citizen-led and local business-led initiatives in a variety of areas. She's passionate about building active transportation infrastructure and believes that such infrastructure is a key component of creating well-being and strong communities. And we thank you very much for that. So now it's my distinct pleasure to invite our second speaker, Anna Sierra Heffernan-Wilker, a youth cycling advocate. Anna Sierra is in grade 8 at Fisher Park Public School in Ottawa and trains with the Ottawa Bicycle Club. Last year, she traveled around Europe, Latin America, the United States, and Canada by bike with her family. She is a passionate cycling advocate and looks forward to the day when kids across Canada can ride safely to school. Come on up.
Hello everyone. My name is Anna Sierra and I'm 13 years old. I like sports, books, hanging out with my friends, and eating muffins. I also like riding my bike. A decadent sense of freedom settles in as you head through the farm to badminton practice, as you pedal to school with 2 minutes till the bell. Last year, I traveled by bike for nearly 12 months, pedaling through the windblown fields of the Netherlands, across the bumpy pavé in Belgium, up exhausting hills in France, through the scraggly mountains, and by the sparkling coast of Spain. Riding among hundreds of people of all ages during Bogota's Ciclovia, wandering the streets of Cuba surrounded by welded bicycle taxis and old cars, riding on the narrow shoulders of coastal U.S., my breath gasped away by the sun pennies glinting on the broiling waves. We have seen many things, my bike and I, and we are ready to see so much more. Unfortunately, sometimes riding is not all sunshine, lollipops, and owls on the side of the bike path. Sometimes the route to school includes really busy intersections. Sometimes your brother has to ride on a tandem and isn't allowed to go many places by himself because the streets near our house in a neighborhood full of kids, families, and cyclists just aren't safe. Me and my friends and all kids in Canada deserve to be able to feel the wind in our hair, to be able to pick up some sour keys at the corner store without worrying about traffic. Please consider bike paths, separated bike lanes, and traffic calm measures when creating a national cycling strategy. There is no better feeling than that of chatting and pedaling without a parent or responsible adult in sight. I am sure that many of you can recall the good old days filled with laughter and squealing tires and empty streets. My generation would like to feel that as well. You deserve a little free time instead of having to shuttle us halfway across town. We deserve to be able to bike to the library, to swimming lessons, to the park. However, times have changed. Roads have gotten filled with grotesquely obese cars, and neighborhoods and cities have been built around them. Intersections are often nail-biting, and streets force you to ride between the Doran zone and traffic. This is definitely not the best environment for kids who love to have fun. A national cycling strategy with a focus on separation from traffic and traffic calming measures will ensure that kids can be kids, and it will make Canada a healthier, greener, and awesomer country in the process. Thank you.
Wow, wow. Fantastic. That was really great. Thank you, Anna Sierra. Our third speaker is Kristen Schwartz from CultureLink Settlement and Community Services. Come on up while I introduce you. Kristen leads the cycling programs at CultureLink Settlement and Community Services in partnership with Cycle Toronto and the Toronto Cycling Think and Do Tank. The cycling programs include Bike Host, a cycling mentorship program for newcomers to Canada, and the Bike to School project, which will engage with more than 22,000 students in cycling education programs from 2016 to 2019. These programs were recognized by Ontario's Share the Road Coalition and with the Wheels of Change Advocacy Award in 2016. Kristen is the mother of a 9-year-old daughter and is also pursuing a graduate degree in adult education and community development at the University of Toronto.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm here representing CultureLink Settlement and Community Services in Toronto. Our agency has almost 30 years of experience in serving newcomers to Canada. And we're one of many, many similar agencies across the country, welcoming the more than 250,000 newcomers who arrive each year. We have found our cycling programs to be an excellent way to help newcomers get oriented and get connected in their new home. One of these programs, which I'll describe today, is called Bike Host. Based on our experience, we believe that a national cycling strategy would benefit newcomers and indeed all Canadians. Bike Coast is a 4-month summer program. You can go to the next slide. We loan newcomer participants bicycles and then match them up with a trained volunteer mentor who helps them get familiar with cycling safety tips, road rules, and the best routes for getting around the city. We partner with university-based researchers to evaluate the program's impact. And in 2016, they found that by the end of the program, participants were much more likely to use a bicycle for travel, for shopping, work, and school. Bicycle mode share among participants increased from 7% to 31% for such trips. That's quite a high mode share for a basic encouragement program. Participants reported saving money on transit, gas, and shopping overall because of having a bicycle. Participants said that they learned more about the city and felt a stronger sense of belonging. One participant told us, "I've been here for 4 years, but I've never felt so much as if I belong to this society. When you bike, you know places, you notice more, you see more. And then, because you know the city, and sometimes more than a citizen of the city, you feel like you belong equally as those people who've been living here a long time." And I want to add, it's unscripted, I want to add that this program last year was held in outside of downtown. So we're not talking about just the really cycling-friendly neighborhoods of Toronto. In view of these benefits, we support the call for a national cycling strategy for 3 reasons. First, the newcomers we serve are very sensitive to information provided by government and large institutions. We've learned a lot from them about the importance of clear and consistent messaging. Many municipalities and provincial governments have publicly stated that cycling is an important and growing part of the transportation network. The federal government should be amplifying this same message. Second, a national cycling strategy could bring together federal departments to support this healthy and sustainable mode of transportation. For example, the department which funds our work, Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, could embrace cycling programs like Bike Coast and others and make them available in all the cities and towns across Canada where newcomers are building new homes. We know from our colleagues in the settlement sector that the interest is there. Finally, improved cycling infrastructure built with federal contributions will make it far easier for more newcomers and more residents overall to start cycling and keep cycling. And in view of our this place where we are today, the Aboriginal Peoples Committee Room, just want to say that the beautiful artwork here today can serve to remind us of our obligations to take care of the land, the water, and all of our relationships. And we should be moving forward to make our transportation system more sustainable, more respectful, and a national cycling strategy can be part of that.
Thanks very, very much. Our next speaker is Kim Parada, Executive Director of the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. Kim has a master's degree in health science and over 30 years' experience working on environmental issues from a health perspective. Kim has prepared over 20 health-based reports on issues related to air quality, climate change, and the built environment for organizations such as Toronto Public Health, the Ontario Public Health Association, and the Clean Air Partnership.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here today. My board, who consists of 10 doctors and 1 lawyer, they were thrilled that we've been invited to participate in today's event, so thank you so much. First of all, I'd just like to say that CAPE, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, it's a nonprofit organization. We're a small organization with a lot of volunteer doctor members, a number of donor members, and that is directed by doctors who understand the integral relationship between human health and the environment. In March, we came out with a new report on active travel, active transportation, and public transit, and we did it exactly for the reasons I'm going to be talking about today. So first of all, a national cycling strategy would be a triple win for public health, I'll just change my page, hang on. It would help us to reduce chronic diseases, the rate of chronic diseases in Canada. And right now, the rate of chronic diseases is escalating at an alarming rate. I've heard people who work for the health departments in places like Newfoundland say that it's actually threatening the provincial budget because health care costs in some provinces are off the chart, and a lot of it has to do with chronic diseases. They place a heavy burden on the healthcare system, while also producing pain, disability, and premature deaths for hundreds of thousands of Canadians each year. For example, cardiovascular disease alone costs $12 billion each year for Canadians. So, physical activity is one of the most effective treatments for chronic disease. We know that 1 hour of moderate to vigorous activity per week can reduce the risk of premature deaths by 4 to 9%. That's 1 hour. And yet, we know that most Canadians do not get the levels of physical activity that they need, and that the number one reason for not doing so is time or the lack of it. And so we know that with active transportation, that people have the opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, that you can actually kind of go out and you can get to work and you can get your exercise at the same time. One study, and there's many, found that people who work or cycle to work, oh my gosh, I'm going to keep moving a little faster here. Okay. A national cycling strategy would also reduce the acute and chronic health impacts associated with air pollution. In 2008, CMA told us that 21,000 premature deaths will be caused every year by air pollution, costs $10 billion a year in direct healthcare costs, and the transportation sector is one of the most significant sources of air pollution in this country. A national cycling strategy would also reduce greenhouse gases that contribute to climate change. And once again, the World Health Organization has called climate change the most significant public health threat in the 21st century. It's estimated that 250,000 people per year will die by 2030 from climate-related impacts. We know that already tens of thousands of people are dying every year around the world from climate change already. While Canadians will not experience the worst of these impacts, we will not be immune to them. So the transportation sector in Canada is responsible for about 1/4 of all greenhouse gas emissions. Modeling studies have told us that we can significantly reduce emissions of greenhouse gases and air pollutants by getting people to replace their short car trips with bike trips. A national cycling strategy is the holy grail of public health. The public policy that serves many public health goals with one investment. It's an investment that will pay for itself many times over in health care savings alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can really see the impact that this strategy would have. Our next speaker is Reba Plummer, the co-executive director of Urbane Cyclists Co-op. Reba has been an avid cyclist her whole life and cycles every day. She is also a certified bike mechanic and a founder of Wenches with Wrenches, a volunteer program that hosts bike repair workshops for women. In 1990, Reba opened her own bike shop and a decade later joined Urbane Cyclists Co-op, a bicycle store dedicated to everyday cyclists at a time when the industry did not think that a store focused on commuters would survive. 20 years later, Urbane is still going strong, and the bike world has realized that urban cycling is a growing industry. Please come on up.
Hello, I'm here to speak to the fact that we need a national cycling strategy. Now you may ask why. Well, I say, no, is this our clicker here? Ooh. Bikes mean business. I have 30 years experience earning my income on my bike and in the bike industry. Bike shops contribute to the local and broader economy by employing people, paying taxes, and supporting small and large manufacturers and wholesalers in Canada and abroad. Urbane has been contributing to the local economy for 20 years. We employ over 20 people year-round, and we have a payroll of over $500,000. Now, when I started cycling in Toronto, this is what the infrastructure looked like, non-existent. That is what bike usage looked like too. Fast forward 30 years, Now you see a network of bike infrastructure, but even in this picture you can see that many of the routes are disconnected. We need to connect the routes. When people commute and run errands on their bikes, they do not contribute to climate change. They help reduce congestion. They're easier on the roads. They improve their physical and mental health, and they are more likely to stop and shop. It is extremely rare that someone on a bike is stuck in traffic, can't find a parking space, or is overcome by a fit of road rage. As bike infrastructure increases, bike usage increases. Just imagine what another 30 years could do if we had funding. Build it and they will ride. Later this month, I will be leading a bike tour to the Gas Bay. Bike tourism is another way that bikes mean business. Cyclists can easily stop, admire the scenery, and then drop in at a cafe and spend some money, like the group was doing last year. So, bike tourists enjoy traveling places where there is first-rate bike infrastructure. A good example of this is the Route Verte and Bienvenue Cycliste programs in Quebec. Wouldn't it be wonderful if the Route Verte stretched across Canada? Cyclists spend their money all along the route at stores, restaurants, museums, historical sites, attractions, campgrounds, motels, and resorts. Don't imagine they are traveling by bike for lack of funds. They are doing it because they love it. Canada needs a national cycling strategy to bring all the pieces together. Let's create a plan that leads the way. We want the federal government to champion cycling in Canada. Every day, people of all ages, ethnicities, and abilities ride bikes for transportation, exercise, and fun. Assigning a small percentage of the transportation budget to cycling infrastructure will have a huge effect. We will be able to proudly say, Bienvenue cycliste, welcome cyclists. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I just want to remind folks about your yellow pieces of paper. Please write down any questions you have, comments that you have, anything at all. We'd really welcome you to do that. If we don't have time to address them, we'd love to collect them and really keep this fantastic conversation going. It's really, really great. So our next speaker is Joshua Shaw. Joshua is from the Wikwemikong First Nation and is the owner of Lightfoot Bike Shop, located on Manitoulin Island. Joshua advocates for the mental and physical health benefits of cycling and the positive impacts cycling can have for tourism and job creation in his community. In addition to owning a bike shop, Joshua is currently studying psychology at Laurentian University, sits on the Youth Council of the Wikwemikong First Nation, and is co-director of the film Bike for Life. The film depicts the creation of a bike park for Indigenous youth in Joshua's community following a series of youth being hit by cars when biking along narrow roads that did not have bike paths. Welcome, Joshua.
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. I'm not too good in social situations. But why should the federal government get on board with a national cycling strategy? Main point is the 7 generations loose rule that we have, I guess. It's leave the earth well enough for the next 7 generations from yours. And, you know, really sorry. Cycling, we'll take mountain bike trails, for example. They are no more destructive or even less destructive than walking trails, and they're far less destructive than equestrian riding. It makes sense. You know, horses are around. They do more damage than cycling. And like the old saying that I heard, if you build it, they will come, you know? So Another main thing, quick show of hands. Who has seen wild animals just when they're biking? Exactly. Exactly. How many times just, yeah, everybody raised their hand. I don't know what to say to that. I wasn't really expecting that. But you don't see bears in zoos. You don't see anything with being confined. You see them in their natural environment, and there's nothing better than that. And also, too, not just animals, but also every disease has a cure. In my culture, every plant has some sort of usage. I only know 5 off the top of my head, but they cure things from headaches, nausea. One sucks venom out of your body itself, and it's a little tiny plant. That's the exposure. We have black widows in Canada. Why do you not want to know how to save your life in case you're out riding 20, 30K down there? Are you going to be able to pedal to a hospital that fast? And it's no. You really hate to say it, you can pedal as fast as you want, but not really going to make it. And just being out in exposed environments, opens that up. It opens up that possibility. Another thing I want to say is I really hate to bring in race or anything, but we used to live a very active lifestyle. And we're seeing a lot of detrimental health effects nowadays because we're getting more and more sedentary. We haven't had the time span to adjust, more or less. Being active and outside in our natural environment, it's our home, the bush, our home, or other ones have fields and that, So sorry about this. But just little things, it's the right thing to do. There's health, physical, mental health effects that are far beneficial that other people have just touched on, which kind of took my presentation. But one main thing is, it is the least destructive investment Canada can make. Anywhere. You can go to the mountains from BC, you can go to the La Cloche Mountains that I see almost every day when I'm out on my ride. You can go to the plains. It's the least detrimental to the environment, which then leaves it for the next generations to follow and use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, our 7th presenter is Kate Whitfield. Kate launched the Ontario Office of Alta Planning and Design in February. She is a professional planner and a professional engineer with over 10 years in the consulting firm industry in the Ottawa area. She lives here with her husband and 2 sons. Alta is an international consulting firm with a mission to create more active, healthy, and people-focused communities. Founded in 1996, Alta has more than 200 staff in 30 offices across North America.
So obviously, first, what an honor to be included in this list. What an amazing group of presentations. And obviously, second, Anna Sierra, you want an engineering career or urban planning, I'd like to offer that up. We could use you, but you can obviously do anything with your skill set. So yeah, I'm here to speak as a professional planner and engineer to bring that perspective. So an obvious one is, what words are we hearing in our industry? Well, we hear placemaking. We hear sustainability, connectivity, attracting investment. We hear competitive cities. We love live, work, play sentences. We love to say anything about our community development. Well, what does bikes got to do with that? Well, people on bikes have a lot to do with all those sentences and all those solutions. So that's my first thing. And then the photos represent Ottawa because that's the city that we're celebrating bikes in and that we're going to explore later by bike or by foot. But these photos could be anywhere in Canada and will be, from urban centres to small towns to rural communities. So I put that forward for consideration. But where does federal support come in? So the slide represents the Transportation 2030 strategic plan for transportation in Canada. This is Transport Canada's graphic for the vision for Canada, and the words there are the 5 themes. So again, I'd suggest people on bikes fit in throughout that, whether it's policy, whether it's funding, whether it's different initiatives. And that same idea, more language from those documents is inclusive growth for the middle class. It's greater safety, innovation, and action on climate change. So bikes fit into all themes within Canada's own plan for 2030. Again, people are already on bikes. There are for groceries, for schools, for fun, for work. So we have the framework. People are on bikes. We heard about it earlier from Anders about who want to be on bikes. We also have a lot of guidance in Canada. Canada's getting an update to our geometric design guide. I have to mention that because I'm an engineer. From TAC, we're getting an update. We have the guidance. We know how to do it. We need to share it, and we need to use it. But we have it, and we're getting there. So again, back to federal role. Well, that's earmarked funds for infrastructure, because it has to be quality, it has to be connected. You've heard that a bit today. It has to be throughout Canada, and it needs a leadership from the federal government to reach all communities. So I'll be quick in my last bit to steal from the Federal Highway Administration in the States. They sought from the federal level to the state level leadership beyond the minimum. What a lovely theory, not just doing the minimum. Proactively, convenient, safe. There's Anders all ages and abilities. It was there in the document. And that work led to a guide because it was about small towns and rural communities too, seeing that it's possible through their engineering and urban planning guidance and making it happen. So I'll end on there with people on bikes being part of the answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Et maintenant, c'est mon grand plaisir d'inviter Jean-François Pronovo, who is the Vice President, Development and Public Affairs for Vélo Québec. Jean-François works on the focus, strategy, and development of new projects and partnerships at Vélo Québec. Jean-François Pronovo has been instrumental in building the famous 5,000-kilometer Route Verte that we have heard talked about. Since 1995, he's been involved with the development of this bike route across Quebec. Recently, he has been a key person in the organization of the International Winter Cycling Congress, which was held in Montreal this winter. In 1992, he acted as chief organizer of the first worldwide conference on bicycling, the Conférence Vélo Mondiale Pro Bike Vélo City in Montreal. Merci, Jean-François.
Merci, Judy. Thank you very much for this kind invite. I'm very exciting to be here today with you. So why the federal government should embrace a national strategy on cycling? Because we have, as many other countries in the world, to face with major problems involving with transport and urban sprawl, environment that have been discussed at the Paris conference 2 years ago, and which we are doing not much up now. Major public health problems for our kids and for all the society, and of course for our built environment that of course is not made for human, it's made more for motor vehicles. This year, Vélo Québec celebrated its 50th anniversary, and we are very proud to have been involved in cycling movement for this time, and very glad to be involved in Canada Bikes efforts, and I'm very excited to be here. And this weekend will be a lot of fun in Montreal, beginning tomorrow night and Sunday for the Tour de l'Île, because bicycle is fun. Bicycle is for everyone. Bicycle is part of the solution. It's not the solution, but it's part of the solution when we're talking about mobility. And what we've learned over the years, of course, good for health, good for the environment, good for local economy, and good return for investment, and someone else have talked about that before. And the numbers are there. We know that because we have investigated the different indicators over the years, and the money is there. Bicycle brings money to our communities. And of course, bicycle is booming in Canadian cities. We're talking about Vancouver, we're talking about Calgary, we're talking about Winnipeg, we're talking about Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Burlington, and all other municipalities in Canada, because and the municipalities for the past, I should say the past 10 years, municipalities in Canada are doing a lot, I mean, they never do enough for us, of course. But I mean, they have changed their attitudes in terms of in the way that we have to make space for cycling. And provinces have done some jobs also in bicycle policy, like we have here in Ontario, in Quebec, some policies project in BC and other provinces. The private sector is involved because private companies put money. We have sponsors here today and other big sponsors for our events that we have this weekend. So the private sector is there. So municipal, provincial, private sector is there, but not the federal government. So that's the reason why they should be part of that game. And of course, in Canada, we have jurisdiction, we have federal jurisdiction, we have provincial jurisdiction. So it's not always easy to understand, even when we know everything. But of course, we know that federal government has jurisdiction in environment, has jurisdiction in transport, in infrastructure, and in public health. So my last two images, and of course, dedicated funded is absolutely needed. And dedicated funded, not only funded that would be given to province, and if you have good ideas, you can spend the money. No, dedicated funded for cycling and active transportation. Dedicated funded to promote, to bring more new people to cycling, because we all cycling here in this room, probably. But we have to bring more people. That's the big issue. We have to, of course, to have better infrastructure for us, but better infrastructure if we want to have more people cycling, because going from 1% or 2% in modal share to 7 to 10 to 15 to 20, 25 and 30 like other cities in Europe, we have to do a lot to bring more new people to cycling. We need a national strategy to help us to cope with these barriers, extraordinary barriers that are the railroad tracks in our cities. That oblige us to make a 5 kilometers detour or walking or cycling, and if you're in your car, you just have overpasses and tunnels and things like that. So we need that. We need national strategy to help us to monitoring the progress and to progress province by province and all the way for Canada. My last two images. You know, if we're able to turn this into this, I think Canada is able to be involved in the national cycling strategy. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Jean-François. Bon, alors nous avons notre dernier présenteur. Our last speaker for this segment is Jamie Stuckless, Executive Director of Share the Road Cycling Coalition. Jamie has cycled for fun and for transportation since elementary school, but her real passion for getting around on two wheels began with a bike trip between Ottawa and Kingston while pursuing her undergrad at Queen's. Since then, she has completed a master's thesis exploring people's motivations for cycling, worked as a school travel planning facilitator in Ottawa, and coordinated Ottawa's Bike to Work Month for Enviro Centre. Jamie was inspired by Share the Road's strategic and long-term vision for cycling and the organization's partnership-based approach to advocacy. She's proud to lead the Share the Road team moving forward.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Stuckless, and I'm the Executive Director of the Share the Road Cycling Coalition. We are a provincial cycling advocacy organization that has been working since 2008 to make Ontario more bicycle-friendly. In Ontario, we successfully advocated for the launch of Cycle On, Ontario's cycling strategy. This 20-year vision for cycling is being implemented through a series of short-term action plans, as was mentioned by the Mayor of Victoria. The cycling strategy was led by the Ministry of Transportation in consultation with a wide variety of road safety stakeholders. The strategy is truly collaborative, as 12 provincial ministries all have a responsibility for its implementation. What we've seen in Ontario is that having a clearly articulated strategy has brought stakeholders together under a shared set of objectives. Such a strategy is an important opportunity for government to create a forward-looking framework that leverages and empowers the skills and passions of the cycling stakeholders in this room. It provides a clear opportunity for us to be a partner for government, and by setting clear objectives, it gives us the opportunity to recognize and celebrate successes. We've also seen that the support provided by upper-tier leadership has had a great impact on cycling in Ontario. The provincial strategy has helped to kickstart and support cycling conversations and investments in municipalities across Ontario. The legislative updates and infrastructure funding have gone a long way towards making our communities safer and more accessible for people who want to cycle. And 95% of Share the Road's network agree that we have created a positive momentum for cycling in Ontario since the strategy was launched. Federal support for a national cycling strategy could result in similar gains at the national level, and it would provide an opportunity to address road safety issues that fall under federal jurisdiction, such as rail crossings and truck safety. When developing a national strategy, we would encourage the government to consider the following. First, conduct stakeholder consultations during the strategy development so a wide group of stakeholders have a stake in what's happening, and provide ongoing opportunities for input through a working group on cycling. The government should engage various federal ministries in the strategy. Cycling touches on a number of sectors such as climate change, tourism and economic development, public safety, and health, to name a few. These ministries can all share responsibility for implementation. We also urge you to look carefully at what the provinces are already doing to ensure that a national strategy complements what's already happening and provides opportunities for interested provinces to develop cycling strategies of their own. And lastly, build in resources to ensure that professional support in both government and the nonprofit sector is in place to help you implement and measure the strategy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jamie. That's great. So that concludes the series of presentations that we've requested. I hope you'll join me in a big hand of applause for the incredible variety but inspirational presentations that we had from our speakers. And while we get the technical setup for a contribution from the Netherlands, we're going to have Herbert Tiemens speak to us in a moment via pre-recorded presentation. However, he will be on the phone and will be able to answer questions. So please, we're coming to questions in a moment, so I hope you will have something to share with us. But I would like to take this moment to recognize somebody who's in the room, a member of Parliament, who is going to be receiving the inaugural Canada Bikes National Cycling Advocacy Award. He will be receiving it officially later, but I did want to let you know and give us all a chance to give a hand of applause to our Member of Parliament, Gord Johns. Gord has been an incredible partner of Canada Bikes, and we appreciate what he's done for us and for cycling. And we look forward to working more with Gord over the years to come. And I hope you will be joining us just after this at 5 o'clock. We'll be heading out for some photos. We hope our members of parliament will be joining us, and then going for a bike ride. Or if you don't have your bicycle and haven't been able to get one, we also have a tour of infrastructure, bicycle infrastructure, active transportation infrastructure that will be leading on foot for those who'd rather do that. And then that will be followed by a reception that is being co-hosted by a number of our members of parliament, including Wayne Stetsky, who's here now, and Pam Damoff, and others. So we hope that you'll join us for a fabulous barbecue in the building right next to ours, the Senate or East Block. We have a nice spread set up there, and that'll be from 6 to 7. And we will have many others joining us there. We've had RSVPs from a large number of municipal representatives who are in Ottawa for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Conference. So we have, I believe, every single councillor from Calgary has RSVP'd, which is great news, and many others. So we hope you'll join us there. And are we ready to go to... Oh, no, I did mention it. Yep. So for sure, Senator Nancy Greenspan is reminding us there'll be an opportunity for photos. If Minister McKenna won't, she might be coming just shortly, but if not, she hopes to join us on the steps. So we hope we'll all be there to take some photos and hear a few more brief speeches from some other amazing people working in the cycling field. Okay, so I'm ready to introduce Herbert. Herbert works for the province of Utrecht as a senior policymaker and writes national cycling policies. His specialties are integrated spatial plan development and complete street design. He likes creating bicycle-friendly infrastructure and is especially fond of the combination of public transport and cycling, which we are also very fond of. Herbert also works with the Dutch Cycling Embassy to bring Dutch bicycle culture abroad and has contributed to Think Bike workshops in Washington, D.C., Dublin, Tampere, Helsinki, Joensuu, and Espoo, as well as bicycling events in Tokyo, Miami, Mangalore, Tartu, and Miskolc. That's in Hungary, where I come from. That's very cool. Herbert has pre-recorded his presentation, but is listening in over the phone, so he'll be able to answer questions.
Just a technical note, this was recorded yesterday. We thought that would be a lot easier than trying to rely on Skype in a room like this. And so it's just a still, there isn't a technical error. We're just leaving that up so you get to see Herbert's smiling face.
Okay, I'm working in the province of Utrecht. The province is in between the municipality and the government level, national government level. So the province is 26 municipalities. We are cooperating quite a lot with the municipalities. What are their issues on cycling? And also on governmental level, we work very close to address the problems we and also the municipalities encounter into cycling issues.
And you said you're from Utrecht. Can you tell everybody just a little bit about what it's like to ride a bicycle there?
Yeah, it's not a really big city. So within 20 minutes you are out of town. But you see, especially in the heart of Utrecht, you see people cycling everywhere. Actually, you only see cyclists and people walking. There are hardly cars. It's buses, it's bicycles, it's pedestrians that you see on the streets. They're everywhere. Utrecht is really top of the bill if you compare it to other cities in the Netherlands.
My first question is, do you think it's important for a country to have a cycling strategy? If so, why? If not, why? And tell us a little bit about the Dutch experience.
I think it's very important because in the Netherlands it started in the 1970s after the oil crisis and the idea that we should do something about the climate already. And then there was demand to the national government to invest into strategies for cities. And the national government said, well, that's okay, we want to experiment what to do, what works in cities. So let's try to have a single route through cities. Let's find out what works with all the design of infrastructure. And later on, there were experiments into network building and also in building knowledge, what works, what doesn't work for cyclists. Not only for riding a bike, but also for parking a bike. So it was the complete field of cycling that was covered by national government.
The role of the national government in this was what exactly?
It was enhancing the cities that wanted to invest into cycling, to give them the tools and to make it possible for them to invest in it.
When it comes to creating the kind of comprehensive protected cycling infrastructure that the Netherlands has, I'm guessing that it seems like Canada is about 4 or 5 decades behind the Netherlands. My question is, what stage do you see Canada in right now? Did the Netherlands experience this? And what's the scope of what we need to tackle?
Well, of course, it's a bit different. In Canada, we see a city like Vancouver is already quite far if you compare it to other cities. They have implemented quite a lot already, and also in the strategies that you can use to have traffic calming, to reduce the amount of cars in certain streets, to build bicycle boulevards, to build cycle lanes, dedicated infrastructure for cyclists, dedicated traffic lights. So Vancouver is already quite far, and that knowledge should be enhanced by national government to give other cities the easy way to adapt it to.
When we're talking about making that same infrastructure available to everyone in Canada, how much would it cost for the Netherlands itself to rebuild all the cycle tracks that it's built since the 1970s?
Good question, because we have, that's a rough estimation, we have 40,000 kilometers of protected cycle lanes. And well, to build that, that would have cost 1 million euros a kilometer. So then you can make the calculation.
$40 billion.
$40 billion, yes.
64 billion Canadian.
But what is the most important thing that at the same time, it's not only building the cycling infrastructure, it's also doing something on the car infrastructure to give them better routes, to have filtered permeability, that you still have access to every residential house, to every destination, but you don't have through traffic that much on specific streets that you want to reserve for cycling.
Yeah. Right. So can you tell me one thing that I noticed that you can't help noticing in the Netherlands is how the urban design is almost predictable everywhere. It's almost always the same. You always see traffic coming on residential streets. On every major street, you'll see cycle tracks in both directions, wide enough to have a conversation. How did it get to that point? And what role did the national government play in that?
Oh, that was so important. That was after the big road safety. That was a real issue. And then there was scientific research, what works in road design. And that was laid down in guidelines. And we were adapting and implementing since 40 years now. So that makes it very predictable what you will expect in streets.
So you're saying that the national government played a role in standardizing and bringing together everybody around this idea.
Yes.
If I understand correctly, the Netherlands sort of stopped, or the national government offloaded a lot of that responsibility to the provinces for a certain amount of time, and now is again bringing up this idea of a national cycling strategy, and you have a new one. Why is that? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, all the easy things have been done. So we have implemented cycle streets, we have implemented protected bike lanes. We get now the harder issues that are more difficult to tackle, that we need more commitment from other stakeholders like the health, the insurance companies, schools, like employers, like national railroads. Also, more investments into the really hard infrastructure like bridges over canals, and yes, the more difficult things. And also bike parking at train stations. It's really great to have so many people cycling to the train, but it sometimes becomes a problem when you don't have the space in the streets anymore. So that's not a responsibility that you can load to the municipalities because they don't have the money for it.
Is it typical of a European country to have a national cycling strategy? And do you notice what happens for those who don't?
We are one of the latest countries that have a national cycling strategy. All other countries in Europe, they have a cycling strategy, and they are using it to encourage municipalities to spend grants and also to get money from European projects to show that they want to invest to have cleaner and more efficient transport options in their cities.
And in June, there's going to be at least a first draft of a European cycling strategy too, right?
Yeah.
Do you see the wisdom of doing that as well? Do you think that will impact the Netherlands in a positive way, and how so?
I think so, yes, because it will be presented at the VeloCity conference. So the Minister of Transport will also be at the VeloCity conference. And it's very important for the Netherlands that also in the Netherlands, even cycling is taken more as a mode of transport that we should invest in. It was always there, so people forgot that we should invest in it.
My last question, is there anything you could say to inspire us, to encourage us to go down this route? Something special that you get to experience that you know that we don't?
Some people think you should have cycle facilities on every road, but that's not necessary. You can do small things very fast to make big change. And it's the key to find that, and then you don't have to work for 40 years. You can have done it in 10 years or maybe in 5 years even. Yeah.
5 years, we can catch up to the Netherlands in 5 years.
If you really want, you can do it, yes. Okay, I'm working in the province of Utrecht. The province...
It's not here,
Okay, so that's makes this an international conference, along with the ambassador who's here from the Netherlands. So people are going to go around picking, if you have a yellow paper and you've written a question or a comment on it, someone's going to come and pick it up. Meanwhile, we have questions already coming in via Twitter. So Kimberly Nelson from our board of directors, who's been monitoring the Twitter feed, is going to get things off to a good start with a question from Twitter. And then we'll collect any yellow forms that you have and select a few of those as well. Go ahead.
Perfect. So this is a question that came in during one of the watching parties in Calgary, Alberta. It's from Kevin Brennan, YYC. My 7-year-old came home with safe biking handouts last week. He was excited to teach me. I'd love to see some on-bike instruction too. When will we have education included?
Okay, that's a good question. So who's going to answer that? Does anybody have a perspective on that around education? Our speakers who've had a good experience around moving education forward, or some of our board members? Jamie, yeah, come on up. So we have an answer. If somebody else has a thought around that, think about it. Go ahead, Jamie.
Great question, and I love that education was brought up. Share the Road functions under the framework of what we call the 5 E's of being bicycle friendly: engineering, education, encouragement, enforcement, and evaluation and planning. It really is about taking all of these important elements together, and education is one that we've been really honored to work on quite closely over the last 2 years in partnership with Cycling Canada and CanBike. Andy Wilson is in the room here today. So it's something that we all recognize. There's an opportunity to enhance and deliver, more courses to more Ontarians and Canadians over the next few years. And specifically here in Ontario, we are working with schools and with summer camps to train teachers and instructors of summer camps on so that they can actually deliver cycling education as part of what's happening during the day programs of schools and summer camps. And we're doing that throughout 2017, and we hope that it'll create a great pilot model with some excellent data that can be shared across the country. And we're focusing here in Ontario because that is where Share the Road is, and we got the funding from the Ontario 150 grant program. But there certainly are some efforts here underway in Ontario that we hope will go national in partnership with CanBike. It's such an important element, so thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie. Okay, so we have a number of questions, but we'll take one from this one. So how can cycling, I know there's a few of you speakers who've addressed this a little bit, how can cycling help to empower marginalized communities across Canada? Does someone who works with marginalized communities have any words to answer that question, by chance? Who hasn't already said what? You want Kristen? Yeah. Actually, yeah. Do you want a second to think about it? Okay, because I have another good one. Actually, a couple of these questions came up. We do have someone here from CUTA, the Canadian Urban Transit Association. We really appreciate it. But you're not the only one who asked the questions, so I'm going to ask this question. How will we integrate and include public transit agencies into the national cycling strategy? And that, you know, it could be one of our board members if they want to speak to that. So we know that multimodal is essential. So would you like to say something to that?
I'll just say something brief, and then if anyone else wants to answer it, and there's another question here that, while I'm up here, we'll do. I wish Herbert was here, just because that tie between mass transit and cycling is so obvious. But I just want to mention one thing that in a room like this is worth saying for transit specifically. And this came from a former board member who it does integrated mobility studies in Amsterdam. And she sat me down once and said, listen, if you want to know one thing about cycling and transit, it's this. She told me, because of the law of the area of a circle, when you extend the diameter of a circle by 3 times, you don't extend the area of the circle by 3 times, you don't extend it by 9 times, but you extend it by 27 times. It's just math. I want you to think about that for a second. So right now, if a transit station is planned for walking only, exclusively, you get 1 unit of people that it serves. If you plan for it to connect to cycling, you get 27 units. You don't have to build a new train station. It just reaches 27 more people for every one that you are currently serving, if you connect it properly. And that explains the train station in Rotterdam. So I would leave you with that nugget. I think we can talk about that at length, and CUTA is doing some amazing work about that integration stuff. There's another question here about how to counter arguments against cycling due to severe cold and snow. And I thought, as the board member who's on the International Cycling Federation, I could probably address that. One thing is, I thought about putting in Finland's, I thought about putting in Sweden's, I thought about talking about Norway's $1 billion commitment to cycling superhighways in its 8 largest cities as part of its national transportation, which has been folded into its national climate change action plan. Except that on that very last one, I don't speak Norwegian. It's very complicated to read the actual document. And the person whom I spoke to, who was from Norway, who told me about it, who was from a municipality, was doubtful of whether it was actually going to happen. So that's not a very good argument just to say that all these snowy countries are doing it. It's also maybe not a very good argument to say that actually on the planet, the further you go north, the higher the bicycle mode share. So to the point where Yukon, for example, has 3 times the mode share of Florida. It's probably also not worth saying that I can do it, because who cares if I can do it? It's whether everybody will. But I will tell you that snow is not a barrier to cycling, and just what I suggest you do is go to northern Scandinavia, go to Linköping, go to Umeå, go to some of the great university towns in northern Scandinavia, and just see what happens. And I think it's one of those things that plagues us in Canada for cycling in general. We haven't seen it, we don't know it exists, but once it comes, we will love it.
Thank you. Senator, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on that last discussion. In Canada, we have snow. The snow comes everywhere. We're very lucky. In Canada, when we're building infrastructure for cycling, we need to keep in our mind that this can convert to infrastructure for active transportation in the winter through cross-country skiing, fat biking, snowmobiles, all kinds of other methods. So we don't want a seasonality barriers in our infrastructure development. Multi-use all year round, snow or not snow. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we are running out of time. We have excellent questions. I'm going to encourage you, please come on up while I'm saying this, to continue the conversation out on the steps of Parliament and at the reception, where we do know most of you have indicated you're coming. So these are great conversations to continue on.
So earlier there was a question about how cycling can empower marginalized communities. And from our experience, specific experience working with newcomers and also working with youth in the school system and outside of the school system, some things that come to mind are that bicycles help to increase knowledge of community. Bicycles help to increase mobility. People who bike and who are learning through our programs have the opportunity to develop technical skills and gain confidence in technology. Increase access to public space and confidence in public space. But I wanted to say also that I think that the community connections and partnerships are so important, because it's not just about the bike, it's not just about the individual experience of biking, but all of this advocacy that we do. If we can engage with the marginalized communities that we hope to be, having a relationship with, then those are the opportunities for people to have a voice, to have a chance to shape their community. And just this morning in Toronto, students from 5 different high schools stood at the corner of Christie and Bloor and spoke out for the Bloor Street separated bike lanes, which are in a pilot phase right now, and those students were saying that it was important to them and to their future in the city that those lanes be permanent and be extended across the length of the city, and was an excellent example, I think, of young people speaking up and having a voice on something important to them, important to their mobility and their future. So I hope we can all, keep that in mind as we're doing this work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks very much. Okay. The question is, there are good examples of bike infrastructure in larger cities. What are some examples of small towns, such as under 10,000, that have shown leadership in building infrastructure? So I've asked our engineer here to say something.
It's funny, the question comes from the mayor of Smithers, BC, who I've tried to rope into biking with us later today, so that's kind of funny. So I'll pick on Ontario examples that are recently at the Eastern Ontario Active Transportation Summit and the Ontario Bike Summit. Temiskaming Shores, right, with some efforts with sort of rural road and separated pathway systems. I'll pick on County of Simcoe, more for the plug of tourism and how they're linking it in. I know it's a bike infrastructure question, but that's fair. And we heard from Cornwall and their leadership and advocacy. And then if I'm going to skip over to BC, Gibson's BC is doing some advisory bike lane projects. So you are seeing it in the small towns. We hear it often. We hear we can't do it. We're not a big city, and that's why people like Share the Road and others are putting out the tools for smaller communities that can say, this can happen for you too, and we recognize your context. So there's lots of Canadian cities doing a lot.
That's right. The Eastern Ontario Active Transportation Summit just happened yesterday and today in Carleton Place, just outside Ottawa, and Almont, which is a very small little place just outside Ottawa, is actually doing amazing things as well. Okay, we're going to wrap it up. Oh, okay. I'm going to read a couple of questions that we may not get answers to, but they'll tweak your interest so you can talk to the people who've asked these questions and provide your answers. So one of them is about, what is the current thinking about e-bikes and their role of increasing commuter distances and therefore increasing the need for cycling infrastructure? Will e-bikes be seen as a disruptive technology? So we're not going to answer it right now, but it's an interesting question. Another one is, how best can the bike community push for several investments in active transportation infrastructure? How do we move past the constitutional debate about the division of powers? So those are something else here. How to counter arguments. Oh no, you've already done the one about the winter. And we've got a whole bunch more, and there's more coming in from Twitter and the webinar, but it is almost 5 to 5. So what I think this shows you is that we could probably talk about this for hours and days. It was a very short first summit, and we're really pleased at how well it's gone, and we have a number of great activities still with our partners. So we're going to ask in a moment for people to make sure you take your packages with you. Oh, right, the feedback forms. There's a form inside your package. Can you take it out right now? And while I talk for another moment, you could start to fill that in. We do want your feedback. In particular, we're hoping, of course, to do this again. So any thoughts? We'd love to have your compliments on what you liked, but also anything you would change and improve. We won't be offended. We know it was too short, et cetera, but you got to start somewhere. So what we're going to do next is we're going to join our partners with National Health and Fitness Day outside on the front steps of Parliament, where we understand a number of MPs are making their way over to. And also that's been open to all of Ottawa and all of the delegates to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities conference. So we anticipate a good number of people there. There's a local band called Hey Buster that is got a new CD out, and they've got some great tunes around cycling. So they're going to be playing some tunes. The Can Bike tent is set up. There's been people doing stuff. So we're going to head out there in a moment. Anders has a few words.
I just want to say one thing, which is traditional at conferences, is to make the person who made most of it happen stand up, and let's make them blush and give them a big round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, a member of our board of directors, Kate Walker. And of course, there's lots of you in the room who've also done so much work to make this happen. Thank you very much, but we know who you are. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anders. I also wanted to note that there are a number of people in the room that had hoped to speak, but because of some miscommunication, I do want to point out we have two high school students who took time out of their school day and they had a presentation. Could you two stand up, please? Who came here ready to present. And we were so sorry, and we've asked for their presentation, and we're gonna make it available so that you can hear what a slightly older youth from high school have to say about cycling. So I'm gonna ask that you put your evaluation forms on the table as you go out the back door. You can drop it on the table for us. If you don't mind leaving your name tag, we will recycle it. Also, one of the MPs who has spent most of the time here, he just had to duck out, but Wayne Stetsky, who is co-hosting this reception this evening, has some amazing pins that say, "Make Canada a cycling nation," which is really cool. So if you want to pick one up, they're also on the front table on your way out. And we welcome the Canada Bikes. Okay, have we given the ones to the speakers though? No. Okay.
Nancy's t-shirts.
Oh, right. There's some T-shirts out there too from Senator Nancy Green-Rain that are available for people to pick up. So there's some goodies to pick up. Grab an apple or an orange or grape on your way out the door too to fuel you for a walk or a bike ride. And we really hope you stick around and talk to all of us. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup d'être venu avec nous.